Rapid fire leadership. Shall we begin the gauntlet of rapid fire leadership? Who is ready to play The Price is Right? I feel like this is like some kind of game show. All right, first one. God's vision for his church is bigger than our vision for the church. God's vision for the church is bigger than our vision for the church. Typically, what God does is he always has a bigger and better idea for the church, and he downloads to the pastor or me probably a very small percentage of what the vision is. And then we go from there and we move forward. But this church will always be a church that goes back to God and understands that if God is a big God, he's going to have a big vision for what we're doing. And that's why I always encourage people, don't be afraid of the word big, because our God is alone big, and he does what? Big things. And so I want to make sure that we start there, that God's vision is what this vision has been birthed from. This isn't not my idea. This is God's idea. Moving on, because we are in a season of innovation and creativity. I want to be thought leaders in the church world where we think through and we are creative. So just this statement, lack of creativity is a lack of effort. Told you this is going to be rapid fire, so it's going to be a little bit all over the place. Lack of creativity is just a lack of effort. We are all creative, but it's time to put effort into creativity, because creativity is the language of today's culture. That creativity is the language of today's culture. Along the lines of creativity is this, just this statement. At some point, we stop doing ministry out of imagination and we do it out of memory. At some point, we stop doing ministry out of imagination and we start doing it out of memory. And you know what I'm saying there is, when we are not creative, you become a little bit stale and you start doing, and the way you're trying to move forward is by what you remember, not what you're dreaming or visioning for your life. So a lot of times, this is why resolutions don't work for a lot of people, because they write down new resolutions and they put it in the old body of discipline, of undisciplined nature. So they have new goals, but they don't have a new outlook. What we need to do as a church is we need to constantly lead in imagination, lead with creativity, because the moment we don't, we will no longer be leading out of creativity or imagination. We will be leading out of memory. And if you lead out of memory, you will return to where you came from. We are never called to return to where we came from. We're always meant to go from glory to glory. Yesterday's glory will not look like tomorrow's glory. So I don't want to return to yesterday's former glory. I know what's ahead of me is better than where I came from. So I want to keep moving forward, pushing forward. I heard Mark Batterson say this. I love this statement. Just another statement for you. It is irreverent to be irrelevant. It is irreverent to be irrelevant. That may touch some religious people wrong, but just so you know, COVID has changed your pastor. I lost my care gene with religious people through COVID. What I mean is, I love the person, but I will not compromise my leadership because of the spirit. So when I say it is irreverent to be irrelevant, many people will be like, the church was never meant to be relevant. And I'm going to be like, if you're not relevant, then who are you speaking to? If you can't be relevant. And then I actually wrote a portion of a chapter in a youth pastor book about 5 years ago that we have misdefined what relevant is. Because a lot of people think what relevance is a lot of people know your name on Instagram and you have a lot of followers. That's not being relevant. Relevant is being somebody that meets needs and doesn't meet yesterday's needs. You meet today's needs. You're fulfilling the right now situations. That our church is relevant because we're feeding people. That makes us relevant. Why? Because people are hungry. And I think we have to redefine. So I love that Mark Batterson almost said it. It's irreverent to be irrelevant. Was Jesus, even when he was hated, did he ever arrive at a moment in his life where he was irrelevant? He was always relevant. He was always the topic of a good or a Pharisaic conversation. And we have to understand that's because his lifestyle was so strong and his leadership was so firm. That's how we must lead as a church, that we know who we are. We're going to build a culture that moves people forward, that loves people, that values people, but it's not going to compromise and stop for a few people who think it should be a little bit differently. We want to make sure that we are relevant as we move forward. Our goal is not to be only relevant and that's it, because again, we have to challenge our definition of relevance. If you think the church is meant to have a lot of followers, that's a byproduct of being effective. Followers are just a byproduct of being impactful. I don't want our church to have a lot of followers first. I want our church to be impactful first. So what I mean by relevant is our church is making a huge impact in the local city that we're in. And I believe that we are. Next one. We want to grow more so we can give more. You can say that for your personal life. I want to grow more so I can give more. We want to grow more so we can give more. So why do you want to grow at the house? Pastor Micah, why do you want to grow? Why do you want to grow numerically? Why do you want to grow financially? Why do you want to grow? Why do you want to go into another building? Why do you want to, why? Does it matter? Do people matter? Does it really matter? Can we just sit where we're at with who we have already? Can that be okay? Our numbers aren't important. We want to grow more so we can give more. Because if we stay where we're at, we can only give what we have in the current situation that we're in. But if we grow more, we can give more. And you guys already know the heart of this house is, man, we want to give. We want to feed. We want to do whatever we can to meet this city's needs. So we're going to grow for a lot of reasons, but the end all is we're going to give more, and we're going to give a whole lot more. And I'm excited about that. Next one, always have vision beyond your resources. Always have vision beyond resources. I pray that your vision is bigger than your bank account. Your vision you should never be able to immediately pay for the vision that you think of. And if you want to start a business, this is for you. If you ever want to be innovative, this is for you. If you ever want to start something that is too big, too scary, unsure, this is for you. Because when we started this church, we had no money and a lot of heart and a whole lot of Jesus. But when you do the right thing with Christ, he brings provision. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And just know this, if you can pay for your vision, you never needed Jesus. Because you were your source provider already. God's like, you have to involve me in this equation. When you dream, when you get a vision, it has to be bigger than what you already have. I stole a page from Mike Todd. All you have is all you need. All you have is all you need. It's where you start from. We moved venues 3 times. What people don't know, on the front end, every time that we moved venues, from that high school the elementary school to Mopac to Ridgely and now Toys R Us, every step we didn't have adequate finances. Again, we are not a 15-year-old church with a 15-year-old savings. We are a young church who had to spend to grow, and invest to grow, buy groceries. Oh, why would you buy groceries? You have a building campaign. Because we're going to do what's right first, and God will take care of us on the back end. We have a bigger vision. And so we understand that all of this is built by God for God. At the end of the day, that's all it is. And I want you to understand for your life, it's the same way. We must have more vision than we have resource. Don't let it make you feel poor or disqualified. God needs a role in how to accomplish your vision. God needs to step in. There's going to be a distance between what you want to do and how are you going to do it. God needs to fill that space. If not, it's a you dream. If you can't do it on your own, it's a God dream. All right, next one, rapid fire leadership. This is fun. 16% will always resist whatever you do and wherever you go. It is a statistic that 16% will always resist whatever you do and wherever you go. That also applies to the church. That also applies to Christianity. That also applies to me as a pastor. That applies to you, that you have to understand 16% of the friendships you made, 15% of the managerial leadership in your life. Let's say you're working a job and you have a lot of employees and co-employees and you have 3 or 4 managers. Just count on about 16% of co-employees and managers in your life to not agree with your next move, to not write off where you're going. If you're waiting for people to approve what you want to do, you'll never do it, because nobody will 100% approve you to do what's next. This is why we must get to the one person who can always co-sign, and we can always trust that if God signed off, I don't need to wait for anybody else's signature. If God signed off on what I'm doing and where I'm going, I don't need to wait for anybody else's approval or signature. But you have to understand that 16%. And so let's take it to my position. Let's say you want to be a leader. Let's say you want to be a CEO. Let's say you want to run something. Like for me as a church, I'm holding God's vision. It's not just my vision. It's also God's vision in me, but I get to lead this thing forward, and it's such a beautiful thing to lead forward. However, every decision, now we've grown to a place, and I'll let you guys know a little bit of our numbers moving forward. But we've grown to a place that every decision I make, your pastor makes, 16% of now our enlarged congregation will always resist any decision that I make. If I sneeze to the left and not to the right, 16% of people thought I should have sneezed right and not left. It's how it works. It's just how it works. People will always tell us that we're coming back too early or too late. Let's make it relevant to COVID. There's always going to be somebody who does not agree at all times at any moment. So you have to understand that is not your signal to leave. That is your signal to say, there's humanity. There's those good old humans. I knew it was in them to resist me, because resistance means you're going the right way. When you work out, resistance breaks down your muscles. Typically, you call the breakdown a bad thing, but the breakdown is actually a rebuilding thing. It actually causes you to come back stronger. Resistance makes you stronger, not weaker. So we are going to make a whole lot of decisions coming up. And guess what? As a church, 16% of people they won't leave the church. Don't get me wrong. Maybe, here and there, a few people will, but there will always be, and here's what's funny. The 16% is always louder than the 84% that agree. The 16% that disagree are often louder than the 84% that agree. So make sure you are putting that in an adequate space in your mind so you can move forward with health. Hopefully this rapid fire leadership, this is fun, is helping you guys out. All right, next one. I like rapid fire because I'm a little bit ADD and I get to jump from concept to concept and principle to principle. Praise God. Someone shouted amen right there. Failure is usually poorly managed success. Failure is usually poorly managed success. Let me flip it on you. Success is usually well-managed failure. Success is usually well-managed failure. I'll say it again. Failure is usually poorly managed success. And success is usually well-managed failure. What is the ultimate? Even when you read the word of God, what is it? That we aren't going to get everything right. We're going to go through seasons where we failed. We didn't make the right decision. We didn't apply the right discipline. We said the wrong thing. We made the wrong move. But there's grace for that spiritually. But practically as a leader, I feel like building some leaders today. You jumped on the right day. I'm going to build you today. If you want to continually be a failure, it's because the successful seasons, you didn't manage them right. You thought it was because of what you did in the previous season. So you didn't depend on God. You depended on your own wisdom and deciding ability. And you realize it's not in me, but it's in Christ that I have success. So I need to lean into him. But success is usually coming from those moments that you failed, you struggled, you had a storm, you had a difficulty, but you were able to manage it well and say, you know what? Failure doesn't define me. It's going to push me. It's going to challenge me, and it's going to catapult me. When I don't get it right, don't quit there. You need to just write that on your wall or something. When I don't get it right, don't quit now. When I don't get it right, don't quit now. I don't even know. I could go through a million CEOs who got it wrong. And yet now we're praising them for the company that they're a CEO of. Because why? They had failure after failure, but failure is such a better teacher than success. Failure is a much better teacher than success. So let's learn from everything, even in leadership, even in church leadership. Let's learn from what we miss. All right, next one. If something is not producing fruit, kill it. If something is not producing fruit, chop that tree down. Kill it. Kill it. And it's like when Jesus passed by the tree and he cursed the tree for not producing fruit. I think sometimes we think like Jesus was a homeboy and he was a soft-hearted only. My man was also brutal in his leadership. He walked by a tree, cursed the tree, so the tree would never grow fruit again because it had its moment and it had its chance to grow fruit, and it did not do what it was built to do. So I want to make sure that we understand if there's something in our life that's not producing fruit, it may be a man-made idea and it was never a God-birthed idea. Get rid of it. Kill it. And move on. Move on. All right. People will only be as transparent as their leader. The people around you, if you lead them, they're only going to be as transparent as you are. I think our church is only going to be as transparent as I am, and also our staff is, and also our coordinators, and also you. They're only going to be as honest and transparent as you. So I'm always challenging myself. Maybe I haven't quite arrived at that moment. I try to be transparent and authentic in my preaching, where I kind of try to involve moments I didn't get it right, and then I try to also talk about our church in an authentic manner, in a very, very transparent manner, things I'm still working on. But make sure in your leadership, transparency is actually a gift, not a weakness. It is a strength of yours. Next one, authority comes from authenticity. Authority comes from authenticity. If you want to lead people with effectiveness, don't be someone else. Be authentically you. I've always said it like this: you are most anointed when you are most you. You are most anointed when you are most you. Now, I know you're like, jacked up me? Sure, jacked up, but I'm talking about the version of you that's been redeemed, the version of you that's been saved, and the version of you that is grace-filled. So make sure that you understand that if you want authority, first you have to be under authority. But how do you be under authority? You got to be humble and authentic. Then you move on to authenticity. At our church, this culture is going to be known as a valuable culture where we love and we value people, but it's also going to be a culture where we're not fake. We will not, over my dead body, will this church be a fake church playing any kind of role, any kind of game, any kind of religion. We will not be caught dead being unauthentic. We will be who we're called to be, And we will not apologize for who we're called to be, which that, my friends, is authenticity. Next one, spiritual gifting without emotional intelligence. So that's kind of an equation. Spiritual gifting without emotional intelligence, or EI, as I call it, if you wanted to abbreviate it. So spiritual gifting without emotional intelligence equals illegitimate leadership. It equals illegitimate leadership. Spiritual gifting without emotional intelligence equals illegitimate leadership. Here's what I've learned. Everybody has been given a spiritual gift, but not everybody has grown into emotional intelligence. So everybody has a gift. Not everybody has EI, emotional intelligence, which means when you function in your gift, but you're emotionally not ready, you're walking in illegitimate leadership, which means basically what you're doing is illogical and you're about to hurt other people because you yourself have not grown out of what you're asking people to grow into. You are stuck in what you're asking people to get out of. You are on one decision away from offense. I've learned that a lot of the 16% that will resist us when we make decisions, or resist you when you make your decision, a lot of them may have a spiritual gift, but they lack the emotional intelligence. Just to develop this point just a little bit more, Genesis 45-7. Genesis 45-7. This is the story of Joseph. Joseph had emotional intelligence. If you want to read an incredible story about a man who had high emotional intelligence, read Joseph. Even when he ran out of the room, ripped the coat, but he ran out of the room. That, my friends, is emotional intelligence. It's understanding that I'm not going to get caught up in the heat of things because I have wisdom and I've grown through some things. But in Genesis 40, verse 5, it says, both of these men, the Egyptian's cupbearer and baker, who were being held in prison, had a dream on the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. Remember this, where Joseph had to interpret the dreams? It says this, Genesis 40, verse 6 is Joseph's moment where the Bible tells us Joseph had a high level of emotional intelligence. It says this, when Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they looked distraught. He saw, another word is he saw that they looked upset. So he asked the officials of Pharaoh who were in custody with him in the master's house, why are your faces so downcast today? Emotional intelligence is being able to see what people feel. You can also see what you feel too. Emotional intelligence is seeing what you feel, but it's also seeing what others feel. I feel like I could preach that scripture right there, because that's important. He woke up. Emotional intelligence says this, it's not my life, but I'm going to make that my responsibility to ask them a question. How are you doing? Why are you so downcast today? That was Old Testament, right? But why are you feeling down today? What's going on in your world? It's not my responsibility if I'm emotional unintelligent. It's, oh, get over it, man. Figure out your own life. But emotional intelligence plus spiritual gifting means I care about your life too. And I can see what you feel. I can see what you feel. We need to grow in emotional intelligence, not just because a lot of people pray for greater gifting, but they don't pray for the emotional intelligence to keep the gifting. I know you want a huge gift. I know you want a gift that's going to put you before kings, but the emotional adolescence is going to cause you to ruin the gifts that God has placed in you, because it's going to take you off the platform that your gift got you to. So make sure in the church. Can we just talk church now? Make sure you're not letting emotionally adolescent people take you out of where you're called to be. Because here's what I've learned about emotionally adolescent people. They will always offer their opinion, but it's always a bad explanation. They will always offer their opinion, but it is always an illegitimate explanation. And I want to make sure that all of us in here understand you can't be taken out by an emotional. I don't look to my 4-year-old for life advice. So spiritually, why do we look? I don't even want to go there. I ain't even going to go there. I'm not even going to make it happen. I don't know why we're looking in the wrong place for the right thing. You're looking for advice, but you're going to people who have not developed emotionally yet. And I want to make sure if you're a leader, you go to leaders. You don't start listening to the laity, which is the common people, as the Bible and the church would say. You don't go to the newly saved for you to determine your next step. But what you do is you see and you discern the level of emotional maturity on other people. This is taking a little longer, but I feel like this is really good. So one moment, here's another statement. One moment of EI, emotional intelligence, one moment of EI can make you or break you. One moment of emotional intelligence can either make you or break you. All right, let's move on. We'll move out of the emotional. I feel like I jumped on that soapbox enough. Let's go on from the emotional intelligence. All right, next one. There's a fine line between thy kingdom come and my kingdom come. There is a fine line between thy kingdom come and my kingdom come. We have to be very careful to not replace God's kingdom with our kingdom just because we received salvation and we received a word from God. A word from God doesn't mean you have the license to build what you want or you have the license to build your kingdom. We are always and passionately and eternally building thy kingdom, his ways of doing things. No matter what age we get to, no matter what level of how long we've been saved, when we're 85 years old, we're still building his kingdom. That's it. Next one. It's kind of like a capture statement. Catch people doing the right things. That's something I want to do. But as a leader, you should catch people doing the right things. And that's how you know you have good friends around you. If you are catching your closest relationships, if you keep catching them doing the wrong things, it's not their fault. It's your proximity that is starting to affect your purpose because you're too close to the wrong. So what you want to start to do, I'm just giving you a tip. This is a life tip. Look to your closest relationships and start catching them doing the right things. Start catching them doing the right thing. In the church, look, if you lead a team, if you lead people, I want you to get to a place, you know your culture is strong when you're catching people doing the right things. You know your culture is good and healthy and strong when you can catch people doing the right things. Usually you catch them doing something the wrong way or at the wrong time. Don't do it that way. But catch them doing the right things. And then when you catch them doing the right things, celebrate that. Because people will always repeat what you celebrate. They will repeat what you celebrate. You'll repeat in your life what you celebrate in your life. That one's for free. I didn't even write that one down. But that's actually very true. Because what you celebrate in your life, you make it a habit. It becomes a repeated item in your life that you keep going back to. So make sure your personal mind, you're celebrating healthy things. You're celebrating healthy decisions. How about you celebrate the fact that you saved money yesterday, not only when you spent money? What happens? You're now celebrating a right mentality, which is I put money into savings, not into those new sneakers. All of a sudden, but what do? You can't post on Instagram that you put money into savings and people are like, good job. But you post about your new sneakers and people are like, bro, fire. Why? People will always celebrate the wrong things in your life. So you have to learn how to celebrate the right things. I feel like I'm just kind of getting in people's life a little bit too much. So next one. Brag about people behind their back and to their face. Brag about people behind their back and to their face. Brag about people behind their backs and to their face. Brag about them. Brag about them. Be so thrilled with people. Be so pumped about another person. Don't just wait for people to notice you. You notice them. You have to understand, people will notice you when you start noticing other people. Notice other people, celebrate some achievements, even if it's small. So let's say when we get back to the church world and someone was really good with some system, or they did a great job in the parking lot or the kids ministry or in the greeting team, or they sat someone really, really well. It's small on the scale of, sure, everything, but you saw it. Lindsay is really good at this. When Lindsay sees it, she says it. Because if you don't say it, you'll forget it. It's so funny that we have a nature that wants to say what people do wrong louder than what people do right. Let's make sure that we brag about people at all times. At all times. I feel like we should make that a culture statement right now, because I feel it in my spirit, that we should just brag about everybody at all times. Brag about everyone all the time. I feel like that would just be a great culture right there. We just brag on you because we love you and we understand that you may be on a journey, but God's bringing you on that journey. So I'm going to see you as God sees you, not as I see you. Next one. Leadership as a whole, leadership is expanding your threshold for complication. Leadership is expanding your threshold for complication. Great leaders become really good at confronting complications, both in their own lives and in other lives. Let me just say it maybe more simply for you. Leaders find solutions. There's a second part, and leaders become solutions. Leaders find solutions and leaders become solutions. So I pray that we always. And I want to add one that I'm thinking about because my brain went back to creativity, right? Let's say you see something that is missing. You're like, how do I say, or how do I approach it? And how do I do this? How do I handle this the right way? We'll do it like this. I want you to criticize through your creativity. Here's what that means. Think about it. The way that you criticize is through creativity, which I hope if you're not connecting the dots, here's what that means. When you see something that is missing, you don't say anything. You become creative in how to fill the gap. So instead of burning the bridge, you build the bridge. So become creative in your criticism. Criticism isn't a bad word. Typically, we attach criticism to bad-spirited people because the only people that love to be loud in their criticism are bad-spirited people. But healthy people who do see that something can change become creative in meeting the need that they see. So if you are living creatively and leading creatively, you would say, man, I see that we missed that on Sunday. I'm going to be creative. And it now attaches to what I just said, that leaders have a solution and they also are the solution. Please don't be a leader. If you're only a leader that brings problems to the table, you might want to find a new culture, because leaders who only identify problems are leaders that become problems. They just are. Because you are now identified as a problem because all you talk about are problems. And I want somebody like the disciples following Jesus who will always find an answer, who will walk and maybe even, hey, we're going to walk to Samaria. Fine. We're going to get there and we're going to figure it out along the way. I'm not going to complain that my feet hurt. I'm going to figure out how we can take care of Jesus along the way, because we're going to be creative in our conflict, creative when there's a complication. Be creative when there's a complication. And last, well, I'll do two more and then I'll give you the last few minutes of, just because I have a lot of them. I have a whole paper full of them, but I can't give you all of them. This one, choose your battles wisely. It's an easy one. Choose your battles wisely. Choose your battles wisely. And the last one, integrity is your destiny. Integrity is your destiny. Your destiny is dependent upon your integrity. Your destiny is dependent. Your future you is cheering on the current you to live in integrity. Live in integrity and God will get you where you need to go. Live in integrity and God will place you where you couldn't place yourself. He will open the door that you couldn't open on your own, and he will do for you what you could not do for yourself. It is with integrity and character.